He risked his life for two Apache girls, but her gift was more than gratitude. The sun hung high in the clear blue sky, beating down on the small frontier town that rested at the edge of a vast forest and rolling hills. Dust swirled along the narrow dirt streets, catching the light in little golden spirals. People went about their daily chores, tending to their animals, repairing fences, or carrying water from the well. Children laughed as they chased one another, their bare feet kicking up soft clouds of dust with every step. Life in the town was simple, sometimes hard, but it carried a rhythm that people had learned to trust. Yet even in such a quiet place, danger could appear without warning. Among the townspeople lived a young man named Ethan, whose reputation for courage and calmness had quietly grown over the years. Ethan was not a man who sought attention or recognition. He did not boast of the small acts of kindness he performed, such as helping a neighbor repair a roof or carrying firewood for an elderly woman. Instead, he moved through life quietly, observing the world around him with a careful and thoughtful eye. People often said there was something different about him, a sense of awareness, a calm strength that seemed to steady others in moments of fear. Yet for Ethan, life was simple. He did what he thought was right, even when it was difficult. It was on one of those scorching afternoons when the sun was almost unbearable and the heat radiated off the dry ground that the moment came that would define him. Ethan had been walking along the outskirts of the town, heading toward the river that curved along the forest's edge. The river had always been a source of life for the town, providing water for animals and crops. But it could also be dangerous, especially in the spring, when melting snow from the distant mountains swelled the river into a raging torrent. Today, however, the river appeared calm, with its surface shimmering like glass under the bright sunlight. Ethan's eyes, sharp and observant, caught a movement near the far bank. At first he thought it might be some wildlife, a deer, perhaps, coming to drink. But as he focused, he realized it was something far more concerning. Two young girls, barely 10 or 11 years old, were struggling near the river's edge. Their clothing was simple and worn, and their hair hung in loose braids that moved with the wind. They appeared to be Apache girls, traveling alone or having wandered away from their home. The sight sent a cold shiver down Ethan's spine. Children should never be this close to the water alone. The river, though beautiful, could be merciless, capable of sweeping away even the strongest swimmer in moments. Without thinking twice, Ethan ran toward them. Every second mattered. As he got closer, he saw the river's current pulling at the girls' skirts, tugging them dangerously toward deeper water. Their small hands gripped the riverbank, and their faces were painted with fear. One of the girls slipped, her foot breaking through the soft mud, and she cried out, losing her balance. Ethan's heart pounded. He knew that if he didn't act immediately, tragedy could strike. He had faced dangerous situations before, but this was different. These were children, innocent and unaware of the peril they faced. Fear surged through him, but it did not freeze him. It sharpened his focus. Ethan reached the riverbank, the ground uneven and slippery beneath his boots. He dropped to one knee, assessing the situation. The first girl, the older of the two, had managed to grasp a sturdy branch, her small fingers white with effort. The younger one, trembling and crying, clung to her sister. The river's water gurgled and churned, carrying debris, branches, leaves, and mud toward them. The sound was loud, almost deafening, but Ethan blocked out the noise and concentrated on what needed to be done. "Hold on! I'm coming!" he shouted, his voice strong and commanding. He removed his coat, tying the sleeves into a rough rope, and stepped carefully into the river. The water was icy, colder than he expected, and it tugged at his legs with surprising strength. Each step required caution, as one wrong move could send him into the rushing current. Yet he pressed forward, keeping his eyes on the girls, speaking to them in a calm, soothing tone. He wanted them to feel safe, even as the danger grew around them. Reaching the first girl, Ethan extended his hand. "Take my hand," he said firmly. The girl hesitated. Fear etched across her young face, but something in his steady gaze gave her courage. Slowly, carefully, she placed her small hand in his. He pulled her toward him, supporting her weight as they navigated the slippery riverbed. The younger girl watched, her eyes wide, her breath coming in quick, shallow gasps. Ethan turned back toward her, holding out his hand again. "I won't let anything happen to you," he promised. With trembling hands she grasped him, and together they moved toward the safety of the riverbank. It was not easy. The current fought against them, wrapping around their legs and threatening to knock them off balance. Ethan's muscles burned, his strength tested to the limit, but his resolve never wavered. Every child he had helped, every person who had depended on him in the past, fueled his determination. Step by step he guided them, keeping them calm, whispering reassurances. The river seemed almost alive, resisting their every move, yet Ethan's will proved stronger. Slowly they reached the opposite bank. Mud, water, and exhaustion clung to them, but they were alive, safe, for now. Once on solid ground, Ethan knelt beside them, checking that they were unharmed. Their clothes were soaked, their faces pale, but their lives were intact. The older girl looked at him with wide, grateful eyes, and the younger one hid her face in her sister's chest, trembling but no longer crying. Ethan smiled gently, brushing a strand of wet hair from his face. "You're safe now," he said softly. "You're okay." For a long moment, silence hung over the scene, broken only by the distant sound of the river rushing past. People from the town had begun to notice the commotion. Curious voices called from the edge of the woods, asking if everyone was all right. Ethan stood, helping the girls to their feet, and guided them toward the path that would lead them back to town. Some townspeople approached, offering assistance and praise, but Ethan waved them off. Heroism, he thought, was not about recognition. It was about action, about doing the right thing when it mattered most. Saving these girls was not a choice. It was a necessity. And though the risk had been great, the reward was immeasurable. 2 lives saved from the cruel river's grasp. The girls, now calmer, began to speak in broken words, pointing toward the forest and the distant mountains. Ethan listened patiently, trying to understand where they had come from and where they needed to go. Though the language barrier made communication difficult, gestures and kind expressions bridged the gap. He knew their journey would not end here. Their family, their community awaited them somewhere beyond the trees, and it was his responsibility to see them safely returned. The thought of returning them to their loved ones filled him with a quiet satisfaction, a sense of purpose stronger than any praise or reward. As they walked back, the sun dipped slightly lower, casting long shadows across the dusty path. Ethan's thoughts wandered briefly to the future, how fragile life could be, how small decisions could have enormous consequences. He thought about the courage it took to act without hesitation, the bravery required to face fear head-on. And as he glanced at the girls chatting softly in their own language, he realized something deeper. Sometimes acts of kindness created ripples far beyond the moment, touching hearts in ways no one could predict. This day, this river, these children, they had all changed him in ways he had yet to understand. By the time they reached the edge of the town, the girl's father appeared, running toward them with a mixture of fear and relief etched across his face. Ethan stepped aside, allowing the family to reunite. Words were exchanged, hesitant but heartfelt, as the father's eyes filled with tears of gratitude. The girls clung to their father, safe at last, and Ethan felt a quiet sense of completion. He had done what he had set out to do, risking his own safety without thought for reward. And though the townspeople would remember his courage, Ethan knew the true significance lay elsewhere, in the trust he had earned and the lives he had protected. That evening, as Ethan walked home along the dusty streets, the sky painted in shades of orange and pink, he reflected on the day's events. The world could be dangerous, yes, but it could also be full of connections, gratitude, and quiet beauty. And though the river had tested him in ways he had never imagined, he carried with him the knowledge that courage, compassion, and action could save lives. And sometimes, those lives carried lessons far beyond the moment of rescue. After the terrifying river incident, the small frontier town slowly returned to its usual rhythm. But for Ethan, life had subtly shifted. The memory of the girls' frightened faces and the icy grip of the river clung to him, a reminder of how fragile life could be, even in a place where danger was familiar. Wild animals, harsh weather, and sudden accidents. The sight of those two young girls struggling against the currents had struck something deep inside him. He could not forget the urgency, the fear, or the small hands reaching for his own. But now the immediate danger was over, and a different kind of challenge began. Navigating the aftermath of his actions, bridging worlds he had never truly touched before. Word of the rescue traveled quickly through the town. People talked about it in whispers and in wide-eyed exclamations. Some praised Ethan as a hero, admiring the courage it had taken to rush into the river without hesitation. Others shook their heads in worry, questioning why he had risked himself for two strangers, especially young Apache girls. In those days, relations between the townspeople and the Apache community were delicate at best. There were stories of mistrust, misunderstandings, and historical conflicts. For some, Ethan's actions blurred familiar lines, challenging their own assumptions about courage, responsibility, and empathy. Despite the whispers, Ethan paid little attention. He did not perform acts of bravery for recognition. Yet he knew that saving the girls was not the end of the story. Their family would come searching, and he had to ensure the girls were cared for until they could be safely returned. That night, as the sun sank low and painted the town in gold and crimson, he thought about the path that lay ahead. It was not enough to save a life in a single moment. Sometimes protection required patience, understanding, and trust. The following morning, the girl's father, a tall, solemn man named Naeli, arrived with two other men from his community. They had been searching frantically, calling the girls' names, their voices echoing across the hills and forests. When Naeli finally spotted Ethan with his daughters safe, a mixture of relief, suspicion, and cautious curiosity crossed his face. He approached slowly, his eyes sharp, assessing Ethan as if trying to read the intentions of a man he had never met. The town had warned him about outsiders, and he carried a deep responsibility to protect his family and community. Ethan stepped forward, his posture calm and non-threatening. He did not speak the Apache language fluently, but he had learned a few words from interactions with local Apache traders and neighbors. "They are safe," he said gently, gesturing toward the girls. Nothing happened to them. His voice carried warmth, patience, and honesty, qualities that seemed to reach Naeli even across the language barrier. The father's eyes softened slightly, though caution still lingered. He nodded slowly, signaling a reluctant acceptance, but it was clear that trust would not come easily. The girls, still recovering from the ordeal, clung to their father's side. Ethan knelt to speak gently to them, using gestures and a soft tone to ease their fear. He gave them food, fresh water, and blankets, ensuring that they felt comforted and secure. The younger girl, who had trembled uncontrollably during the river rescue, finally relaxed enough to eat a small portion of bread and cheese. The older girl, still alert and watchful, studied Ethan carefully. There was a quiet intelligence in her eyes, a mix of caution and curiosity. Slowly, trust began to take root, fragile but growing. Over the next few days, Ethan continued to care for the girls, visiting them and their family frequently. He helped repair their small home, gathered firewood, and even taught them how to make simple repairs to tools and household items. His patience was remarkable. He understood that trust could not be rushed, and that the girls' initial wariness was natural. They had been through a terrifying experience, and their father's cautious demeanor reflected a lifetime of responsibility for their safety. Ethan respected that. He moved slowly, spoke softly, and acted consistently, proving through small actions that he was reliable and trustworthy. The townspeople, observing from a distance, were fascinated. Some were skeptical, unable to understand why Ethan dedicated so much time and energy to strangers from a different community. Others admired his dedication, though they could not entirely comprehend it. Children whispered about him in awe, and parents quietly discussed his courage and kindness. There was a subtle shift in perception. Ethan was no longer just another man of the town. He was becoming a bridge between two worlds, someone whose actions could influence understanding and respect. During one afternoon visit, the girls and Ethan ventured to a quiet spot near the forest's edge. They played simple games, mimicking animals, throwing small stones into a creek, and laughing in a way that was both joyful and cautious. The older girl, whose name was Ayana, finally spoke more freely, pointing to trees and explaining small details about her life. Ethan listened intently, using his limited knowledge of her language and gestures to understand. He discovered that the girl's mother had passed away some years ago, leaving Nayeli to raise them alone. Life had been difficult, but the family remained close-knit and strong. Ethan's heart ached for their hardships, yet he admired their resilience. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the distant hills, Ayana brought Ethan a small handmade charm she had crafted. It was simple, a tiny string of beads, but it carried profound meaning. She pointed to it and then to Ethan, repeating words he did not fully understand. Nayeli translated slowly. "It is a gift, a symbol of thanks and protection. She wishes you to keep it, to remember her family." Ethan was deeply moved. The gift was humble, yet it spoke volumes. It was not just gratitude, it was trust, respect, and recognition of his courage. He accepted it with reverence, feeling the weight of its significance. The girl's motherless upbringing and the father's cautious nature made Ethan's role delicate. He could not overstep, could not assume familiarity that was not offered. Yet he had become a quiet presence in their lives, a protector, a helper, someone they could rely on. Small moments of connection, laughing together by the creek, teaching them simple chores, or listening to their stories, built a bond stronger than fear or suspicion. Through these days, Ethan learned that rescue did not end at saving someone from danger. It continued in the care, respect, and consistency that followed. Nayeli began to open up slowly, asking questions about Ethan's life, his family, and his experiences. Though words were sometimes limited, the conversation revealed a shared understanding of responsibility, courage, and honor. Ethan's actions spoke louder than words. He did not lecture, he did not seek praise. Instead, he showed care through deeds, small and consistent. Nayeli, who had been wary at first, began to trust him, recognizing that Ethan's intentions were pure and that his courage was accompanied by wisdom and respect. As days turned into a week, the town began to see a subtle change. Ethan's interactions with the Apache family challenged old assumptions and biases. Children of the town, who had once viewed the Apache girls with curiosity or fear, now saw them as friends, equal and deserving of care. Adults began to talk quietly, reconsidering their own judgments, recognizing the power of simple kindness to bridge cultural divides. Ethan had not intended to change the world, but through patient, compassionate action, he had already begun. One afternoon, a minor incident tested this growing trust. A stray horse wandered near the girl's home, spooked and running wildly. Ayana froze in fear, while her younger sister clung tightly to Nayeli. Without hesitation, Ethan ran forward, guiding the horse away from danger and calming it with gentle words and steady hands. The family watched in awe as he managed the situation without harm to the girls, the animal, or himself. The event became another quiet affirmation of his reliability and courage. It was a moment that reinforced the delicate balance of trust, respect, and care that had been forming over the past days. Ethan often reflected quietly during these visits. He thought about the nature of bravery, how it was not only found in grand acts of heroism, but in everyday actions, in patience, consistency, and understanding. Saving the girls from the river had been a dramatic, visible act, but remaining present, earning trust, and ensuring their continued safety required a different kind of courage. He realized that true heroism was a combination of bold action and steadfast care, and that both were necessary to make a lasting difference. As the sun set over the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange and violet, Ethan sat quietly near the girls, watching them play safely under Nayeli's watchful eye. He felt a quiet sense of accomplishment, not from recognition or praise, but from knowing that lives had been touched and hearts had begun to open. The bond that had started with fear and danger was now growing into something deeper: trust, respect, and mutual understanding. The days ahead would bring more challenges, more lessons, and perhaps more moments of courage. But for now, the immediate danger had passed, and a fragile, precious peace had been restored. In those moments, Ethan understood a truth that would guide him in all future endeavors. Sometimes, the act of saving a life was only the beginning. The true work came afterward, in the steady, patient effort to nurture trust, to care for others, and to build bridges where fear and misunderstanding once stood. The girl's gratitude, expressed in gestures and small gifts, was only a glimpse of the deeper connection forming between two worlds. And Ethan knew, without a doubt, that he would continue to walk this path, quietly, bravely, and with a heart open to the lessons life had to offer. The days after the river rescue passed quietly at first, but soon Ethan realized that the girl's trust in him was beginning to deepen in ways he had not anticipated. Each visit brought new opportunities to understand them, to learn about their world, and to strengthen the bond that had begun during that terrifying afternoon. The river had tested courage, but now patience, understanding, and quiet companionship became just as important. The girls, especially the older one, Ayanna, had begun to let down the walls of fear and uncertainty, revealing glimpses of their personalities, their dreams, and their resilience. Ethan spent long hours with them, helping with small chores, repairing fences, and even teaching them little skills he had learned from his own upbringing. He showed them how to mend broken tools, gather firewood safely, and recognize the tracks of animals in the forest. He never spoke down to them, never made them feel small, and always encouraged their curiosity. Ayanna, the elder sister, was quick to absorb knowledge. Her eyes sparkled with intelligence, and she asked questions about everything, from the way Ethan could read the wind and weather to why certain plants grew near the riverbank. Her younger sister, who remained shy at first, watched Ethan carefully, learning by observation and quiet imitation. One sunny afternoon, Ethan decided to take the girls on a short walk through the forest, a gentle adventure to distract them from the lingering fear of the river. The girls' father, Nayeli, hesitated at first, concerned about their safety, but Ethan's calm assurance and previous acts of care convinced him to allow it. The forest was alive with sound, the rustle of leaves, birds calling to each other, and the soft murmur of a hidden creek. Sunlight filtered through the tall trees, casting moving patterns on the ground. The girls ran ahead at first, their laughter echoing, and Ethan followed, smiling quietly. As they walked, Ayanna began to speak more freely. She told Ethan stories of her life in the Apache community, the customs, the games, the small festivals and family gatherings. Even with limited language, she managed to convey the sense of joy and belonging that she felt with her family, despite the hardships they had endured. Ethan listened intently, not only learning about their culture but also appreciating the strength and intelligence of these young girls. He realized that courage was not only about facing immediate danger, it was about facing life itself, with its challenges, responsibilities, and small triumphs. At one point, the girls stopped near a small clearing, where wildflowers grew in bursts of color. Ayanna knelt and picked a few, arranging them carefully into a small crown. She placed it gently on Ethan's head, smiling shyly, her earlier fear forgotten in the playful moment. The younger sister clapped her hands and giggled, her joy infectious. Ethan laughed quietly, feeling a warmth in his chest that went beyond the satisfaction of the river rescue. It was a feeling of connection, of seeing the beauty of life reflected in the faces of those he had helped protect. Over the next week, their interactions deepened. Ethan began to understand subtle nuances of the girls' personalities. The way Ayanna approached problems with quiet determination, the way her younger sister relied on observation to understand the world. He also learned more about their father, Nayeli. Despite his initial caution, Nayeli had begun to trust Ethan, observing his consistency and kindness. Nayeli shared small pieces of wisdom, teaching Ethan lessons about patience, respect, and the importance of understanding one's environment. In turn, Ethan shared practical skills, lessons in survival and guidance that could help the family navigate the challenges of frontier life. During this time, Ayanna presented Ethan with another small gift, a delicate beaded bracelet, carefully woven with vibrant threads. She held it out with both hands, her eyes shining with pride and trust. Nayeli translated slowly. "She made this for you. It is a sign of her gratitude, and it carries our blessing. It is more than a gift, it is trust." Ethan accepted the bracelet with reverence, recognizing the significance behind it. He understood that gifts like this were not merely material tokens but symbols of a deeper connection. It was a gesture that represented respect, gratitude, and the fragile bond between two worlds that were only beginning to understand each other. As the days continued, Ethan also observed the challenges the family faced. Life in the frontier was harsh and unpredictable. Food was sometimes scarce, weather could be brutal, and dangers from wildlife or accidents were always present. Yet through it all, the family maintained a quiet resilience, supporting one another and facing hardship with courage. Ethan admired this strength, realizing that heroism was not always a single dramatic act. It could be found in the consistent perseverance of daily life. By helping the family in small, meaningful ways, he was contributing to their well-being and strengthening the trust they had placed in him. One afternoon, a minor crisis tested the bond that had been forming. A small fire broke out in a distant part of the forest near the girl's home, likely caused by a careless spark or a dry branch catching in the wind. The flames spread quickly, and smoke began to rise in thick clouds. Ayanna and her younger sister were terrified, and Nayeli's expression was one of intense concern. Without hesitation, Ethan grabbed a nearby bucket and ran toward the fire, signaling the family to follow with other supplies. He worked calmly and efficiently, directing them to form a line and carry water to contain the flames. After tense moments of effort, they managed to control the fire before it reached the home. The relief that followed was immense. The girls hugged Ethan tightly, their eyes wide with gratitude and newfound trust. Nayeli spoke words of thanks, more sincere than ever before. The fire had been a test, not just of physical courage, but of reliability and the strength of the bond between them. Ethan had proven again that he was more than a rescuer. He was a steady presence, a person they could depend on in moments of danger and uncertainty. The experience deepened their connection, reinforcing the sense that trust, once earned, could grow into something lasting and meaningful. Through these experiences, Ethan also reflected on the cultural differences between his own upbringing and that of the Apache family. He had grown up with certain rules, habits, and expectations, while the girls had been raised with customs and traditions that were new to him. Learning to respect these differences was not always easy, but he approached each moment with humility and openness. He discovered that understanding another culture required more than words. It required attention, patience, and a willingness to adapt. Each day with the girls and their father taught him lessons he could not have learned elsewhere, deepening his empathy and broadening his perspective. Evenings became times of quiet reflection and shared moments. Ethan would sit with the girls near the fire, listening as Ayanna recounted stories of her ancestors, or watching as the younger sister played with small wooden toys she had carved herself. Sometimes Ethan would tell simple stories of his own childhood, of lessons learned and mistakes made, always emphasizing the values of courage, kindness, and honesty. In these moments the girls laughed, asked questions, and gradually allowed themselves to relax in his presence. The trust between them became palpable, a fragile yet growing thread that connected their lives. Ethan also began to notice subtle changes within himself. The river rescue had been an immediate dramatic act of bravery, but the ongoing care and connection with the family required a different kind of courage, emotional courage. He had to remain patient, understanding, and respectful, even when progress was slow or setbacks occurred. He had to recognize that trust was built over time, and that the bonds of human connection were delicate and precious. The experience taught him that heroism was not only measured by bold acts, but by the quiet, consistent effort to nurture and protect those who depended on you. During this period, Ethan's own reputation in the town shifted. People began to see him in a new light, not only as someone brave, but as someone compassionate, wise, and reliable. Townspeople would occasionally come by curious about his growing connection with the Apache family. Some were skeptical at first, questioning his intentions, but as they observed his consistent kindness, respect, and courage, their skepticism waned. Children too watched him with fascination, learning that bravery and compassion could coexist, and that understanding others often required courage of its own. One day, as the sun set in a sky streaked with pink and gold, Ayanna brought Ethan another small token, a tiny woven pouch filled with herbs and seeds from their land. "It is for you," she said quietly, her words simple yet full of meaning. Naeli explained that the pouch was a symbol of protection, guidance, and friendship. Ethan accepted it with gratitude, understanding that the gift carried more than material value. It was a representation of trust, connection, and the lessons he had learned alongside them. He realized that these gestures, humble as they seemed, reflected a deep bond that had grown from courage, care, and shared experience. By now, Ethan recognized a profound truth: rescuing someone was only the beginning. True care extended beyond immediate danger, encompassing patience, understanding, and the slow, steady building of trust. His relationship with Ayana, her younger sister, and Naeli had transformed into something deeper than he had ever anticipated. He was no longer just a helper. He was a friend, a mentor, and a bridge between worlds. And in return, they had taught him lessons about resilience, humility, and the quiet strength found in human connection. As Part 3 draws to a close, the bond between Ethan and the Apache family had grown strong. Through shared moments of learning, play, and mutual care, they had begun to form a connection that transcended fear, culture, and circumstance. Trust had been earned and nurtured, and with it came the promise of future growth, understanding, and shared experiences. Ethan knew that the story of the river rescue was only one chapter. The real journey had begun in these days of quiet, patient care, shaping not only the lives of the girls and their father, but also his own understanding of courage, compassion, and the enduring power of human connection. Life in the small frontier town had begun to settle into a rhythm, yet for Ethan, every day still held a measure of unpredictability. His bond with Ayana, her younger sister, and their father Naeli had grown steadily stronger, rooted in trust, respect, and shared experiences. But just as the world seems calm, life has a way of testing even the strongest connections. For Ethan, the lessons of courage he had learned at the river and the slow building of trust with the Apache family were about to face new challenges that would test not only his bravery, but his patience, judgment, and moral resolve. It began one crisp morning when the town was just waking. Ethan had been helping Naeli repair a small wooden fence near the girls' home. The two sisters ran ahead, laughing as they explored the edges of the forest nearby. Ethan's eyes were always on them, ensuring their safety, when a distant sound caught his attention. The frantic neighing of horses and a loud, angry voice echoing across the hills. His heart skipped a beat. He recognized the voice. It was a stranger. Someone from town, raising concerns about his close relationship with the Apache family. Rumors and fear could travel quickly, and this man seemed to embody suspicion and mistrust. Ethan approached cautiously, careful not to alarm the girls or their father. As he reached the man, he could hear the accusations. "Why are you spending so much time with them? Can we trust him? Is he bringing trouble to our town?" The stranger's tone was harsh, bordering on hostile, and it was clear he was not seeking understanding, only judgment. Ethan remained calm. He understood that fear often stems from ignorance, and that suspicion must be met with patience rather than anger. "I care for them because it is the right thing to do," he said calmly. "Nothing else matters. I will continue to help, as long as they allow me." Despite the confrontation, Ethan knew the more dangerous challenges were not from words, but from the unpredictable world around them. Life on the frontier was harsh, and dangers often appeared when least expected. That very afternoon, as Ethan returned from gathering firewood, he noticed signs of trouble near the forest's edge. Smoke was curling into the sky, thin at first, but growing thicker by the minute. He ran toward it and discovered a small wildfire spreading through dry grass and fallen branches. The flames were moving quickly, fed by the wind, and threatening to reach not only the Apache family's home, but also the nearby town. Without hesitation, Ethan sprang into action. He called out to Naeli and the girls, urging them to grab buckets and blankets to prepare for the worst. Ayana, now more confident after the river incident and their shared experiences, followed instructions calmly, while her younger sister clutched her father's hand, her eyes wide with fear. Ethan organized a small team of townspeople who had noticed the fire, and together, they formed a line to carry water from the creek to the flames. Every movement mattered. A single mistake could allow the fire to spread uncontrollably. The battle with the fire was grueling. Ethan's arms ached from carrying heavy buckets. Sweat ran down his face, and smoke burned his eyes and throat. But his focus never wavered. He directed others, calmed the frightened girls, and kept a watchful eye on the wind's direction, knowing that a sudden gust could turn the blaze into a deadly threat. Minutes felt like hours as they worked tirelessly, and at times Ethan had to make quick, instinctive decisions, choosing between saving a section of grassland or ensuring the girls remained completely safe. Every choice carried weight, yet he trusted his instincts and knowledge of the land. After a tense struggle, the fire was finally contained. The smoke lingered, thick and choking, but the home and surrounding trees had been spared. Ayana ran to Ethan, her face streaked with soot and tears, hugging him tightly. "You saved us again," she whispered, her voice trembling. Nayeli looked at Ethan with a mix of relief, gratitude, and deep respect. In that moment, it became clear to everyone present that Ethan's courage was more than just physical bravery. It was the ability to act decisively under pressure, to protect life, and to inspire others to do the same. But the challenges did not end there. Over the next few days, Ethan faced skepticism from townspeople who still did not fully understand his bond with the Apache family. Some whispered about him, questioning why he devoted so much time and energy to outsiders. Others openly criticized him, suggesting that his actions might bring danger or unrest to the town. Ethan remained patient. He knew that trust and understanding could not be forced. Through quiet consistency, he continued to show that his intentions were pure. He helped the Apache family with daily chores, assisted neighbors when asked, and never sought recognition. His deeds spoke louder than any words, gradually changing opinions, one small interaction at a time. One afternoon, a situation arose that truly tested the trust he had built. A wild animal, a large mountain lion, had been spotted near the edge of the forest. The girls had been playing nearby, and panic set in quickly. Ayana froze, while her younger sister screamed and clung to Nayeli. Ethan ran toward the animal, not recklessly, but with calculated movements, ensuring the girls and Nayeli were safe while keeping the predator at a distance. Using a combination of loud shouts, rocks, and strategic movements, he managed to drive the mountain lion away without harming it, guiding it back toward the deeper forest. The incident left the family shaken but safe. They looked at Ethan with renewed trust, realizing that his presence brought not only protection but also reassurance. It became evident that his courage was intertwined with careful thought, patience, and understanding of both human and natural behavior. The townspeople who had witnessed the event began to soften their skepticism. They realized that Ethan's bravery was not reckless, but guided by wisdom, experience, and genuine care for others. During quieter moments, Ethan and the girls shared small, meaningful experiences. Ayana taught him traditional songs and simple customs, showing him how her people lived in harmony with the land. He learned to appreciate the importance of respect, observation, and patience, qualities that were embedded in every aspect of Apache life. In return, he shared stories of his own upbringing, lessons he had learned about survival, courage, and compassion. Through these exchanges, bonds deepened. What had started as a rescue had blossomed into a mutual exchange of trust, respect, and learning. As time passed, the girl's father, Nayeli, began to rely on Ethan in ways that extended beyond protection. He sought advice on practical matters, from repairing tools to preparing for unpredictable weather. Ethan's consistent presence had become a stabilizing force, not only for the girls but for the family as a whole. Nayeli recognized that Ethan's influence went beyond physical assistance. It was a form of guidance and mentorship, built on trust, reliability, and respect. Yet the world was never fully predictable, and life continued to test the courage and resilience of all involved. One evening, a sudden storm approached, dark clouds rolling across the horizon, carrying lightning, thunder, and heavy rain. The wind howled through the trees and the temperature dropped suddenly. Ethan and Nayeli worked quickly to secure the home, protect the girls, and prepare for possible flooding. Ayana and her younger sister huddled together, frightened but reassured by Ethan's calm demeanor. The storm raged through the night, but thanks to their preparation, the family remained safe and unharmed. Through these trials, fires, wild animals, storms, Ethan and the Apache family developed a deep, unspoken understanding. Each challenge strengthened their connection, proving that courage was not just a single act of heroism but a continual commitment to care, protect, and act wisely in the face of uncertainty. The girls began to look at Ethan not just as a rescuer, but as a friend, teacher, and protector. Naomi, once wary and cautious, now trusted him implicitly, recognizing that his intentions were pure and his courage unwavering. One day, after weeks of shared experiences, Ayanna presented Ethan with a special gift, a small, intricately woven pouch, adorned with beads and symbols significant to her culture. She held it out with both hands, her eyes bright with pride and gratitude. Naeli explained that the pouch symbolized not just thanks but protection, trust, and the bond they had formed. Ethan accepted it with deep respect, understanding that the gift carried meaning far beyond its physical appearance. It was a representation of the enduring connection they had nurtured through shared challenges, patience, and care. By the end of this period, Ethan had grown in ways he had never anticipated. The river rescue had tested his physical courage, but these subsequent challenges had tested his emotional strength, patience, and wisdom. He had learned that heroism was a combination of bold action and consistent, thoughtful care. He had discovered that true courage often meant facing fear while maintaining patience and compassion. And most importantly, he had come to understand that the bonds forged through shared trials were among the strongest, enduring far beyond the immediate danger that first brought them together. As the sun set on yet another long day, Ethan stood quietly outside the girls' home, watching the golden light fade over the distant hills. The events of the past weeks, the river, the fires, the wild animals, the storms, had tested him in every possible way, yet they had also strengthened the ties between him and the Apache family. What had begun as a moment of immediate bravery had evolved into a profound ongoing journey of trust, understanding, and connection. The trials they had faced together had not only ensured survival but had built a foundation of respect, gratitude, and friendship that would endure for years to come. The days had grown warmer as spring settled into the small frontier town, and life, though never easy, had found a rhythm. Ethan's bond with Ayanna, her younger sister, and their father Naeli had grown stronger with each passing day. What had begun as a daring rescue at the river had evolved into something deeper, a connection built on trust, understanding, and shared experience. Yet as any frontier life teaches, even in calm moments, life has a way of presenting final lessons. For Ethan, that moment would come in the form of a gift, simple in appearance, yet profound in its meaning. One afternoon, Ethan visited the family as he often did, carrying a small bundle of supplies, food, cloth, and other necessities he had collected. The girls greeted him eagerly, their faces bright with smiles, a reflection of the comfort and trust that had grown over weeks of shared time. Ayanna ran to him first, holding something hidden behind her back. Her eyes sparkled with a mixture of pride and shyness. Ethan noticed the careful way she moved, sensing that whatever she carried was important. "Ethan," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, "I want to give you something." She stepped closer, revealing a small, finely crafted basket. The basket was delicate, made from soft reeds woven together, and inside lay a collection of small, hand-carved figures, beads, and symbols meaningful to her and her culture. Naeli explained carefully that this gift was not just a token of thanks for saving the girls' lives. It was a symbol of trust, respect, and friendship, a way for the family to honor the bond that had grown between them. Ethan accepted the gift with quiet reverence. He examined the figures and beads carefully, noticing the care and thought that had gone into every detail. Ayanna's voice trembled slightly as she spoke. "It is for you, to remember us, to remember all that we shared." Her younger sister stood beside her, holding her hand, offering a shy smile. Ethan felt a deep warmth rise within him, realizing that the act of rescuing someone had created connections that reached far beyond the immediate moment of danger. The gift carried meaning that could never be measured in words or simple gratitude. It was a reflection of hearts intertwined by courage, trust, and mutual respect. In that moment, Ethan understood something profound. Heroism is not only about bold actions in the face of danger, but also about the quiet, consistent care and attention that follows. The river had tested his courage, the fires and storms had tested his patience, and the challenges of daily life had tested his wisdom. But the gift in his hands represented the culmination of all those efforts, a bond that had been forged through trials, strengthened by understanding, and solidified by mutual care. It was a tangible reminder that the smallest gestures can carry the greatest meaning. Over the following days, Ethan continued to spend time with the family, but now there was a subtle shift. The gift had deepened the sense of connection. Ayanna and her younger sister were more confident, more willing to explore and learn, and Ethan felt their trust in him in every glance, every smile, every small interaction. Nayeli, too, spoke more openly, sharing stories of his own past, of lessons learned in the wilderness, and of the responsibilities he carried as a father. Ethan listened, absorbing every word, recognizing the strength and wisdom that had guided this family through hardship. One morning, a small incident reminded everyone of the delicate balance of frontier life. A sudden spring storm swept over the town, dark clouds rolling in quickly, heavy rain pouring down with little warning. The girls' home, though sturdy, was vulnerable to flooding in the nearby creek. Ethan acted immediately, helping Nayeli secure possessions, move supplies to higher ground, and guide the girls to safety. The storm raged for hours, but through careful action, they all remained unharmed. As the rain slowed and sunlight began to filter through the clouds, Ayanna ran to Ethan, her small hands clutching his coat. "Thank you for everything," she said simply. Ethan smiled, understanding that the gratitude in her voice carried not only relief but a recognition of the trust and friendship they had built. The bond between Ethan and the family also began to influence the town. Children of both communities began to play together more freely, sharing games and laughter. Adults, once cautious or skeptical, began to observe Ethan's consistent kindness and reliability. Slowly, they started to see the power of compassion, bravery, and respect in action. Ethan had not sought recognition, yet his actions had created a ripple effect, encouraging understanding and unity where once there had been distance or suspicion. During one quiet evening, as the family sat around a small fire outside their home, Ayanna presented Ethan with another gesture, a small charm she had made from feathers, beads, and woven threads. She handed it to him with both hands, her eyes shining. Nayeli explained that this charm symbolized protection, guidance, and gratitude, a gift meant to honor not only Ethan's bravery, but the bond he had created with their family. Ethan accepted it humbly, realizing that the true value of such a gift was not in its physical form but in the meaning it carried, a trust that had been nurtured through shared experiences, courage, and patience. Ethan reflected on the journey that had brought him here. The river, the fires, the storms, and the daily care he had provided had all been part of a larger lesson. Life was not only about moments of dramatic heroism, but also about the steady commitment to help, protect, and nurture those who relied on you. Ayanna and her younger sister had taught him resilience, courage, and the importance of trust. Nayeli had shown him wisdom, patience, and the deep strength of familial bonds. And the town had begun to learn that true bravery encompasses compassion, understanding, and humility. As the weeks passed, the family prepared for a small celebration to honor the changing seasons and the bonds that had formed. Ethan was invited as a respected guest, not as an outsider, but as a part of the circle of trust that had been carefully built over time. Ayanna and her sister sang songs, danced, and shared stories of their ancestors, while Nayeli spoke words of appreciation, acknowledging the courage and care Ethan had shown. The small ceremony was simple, yet it carried immense significance. It symbolized the unity, trust, and mutual respect that had developed between them, and the lessons learned through hardship and shared experience. In a quiet moment during the celebration, Ayanna approached Ethan once more. She handed him a small piece of beadwork, intricately crafted, with patterns and symbols that represented life, protection, and connection. She said, "This is for you. It is more than a gift. It is our hearts, our trust, and our gratitude. Keep it, always." Ethan accepted the piece with reverence, understanding that the true gift was not the object itself, but the deep emotional bond it represented. He realized that the act of saving lives had created a connection far richer than he had imagined, a connection that transcended words, culture, and circumstance. The story of the river rescue, the fires, the storms, and the daily care had become more than a tale of bravery. It had evolved into a narrative of compassion, trust, and enduring friendship. Ethan's actions had shown that courage was not just physical, it was emotional, moral, and consistent. By standing with the Apache family, understanding their world, and protecting them in moments of danger and uncertainty, he had forged bonds that would last a lifetime. As the sun set on the horizon, painting the sky with shades of pink, gold, and violet, Ethan stood outside the family's home, holding the gifts from Ayana close to his heart. The girls played nearby, laughing freely, their father watching with pride and gratitude. Ethan felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that the risks he had taken, the challenges he had faced, and the patience he had shown had created something truly meaningful. The gift he had received, humble yet profound, symbolized not just thanks, but a connection forged through shared experience, courage, and mutual respect. In the quiet of the evening, Ethan understood the essence of the journey he had been on. Bravery alone had saved lives at the river, but compassion, patience, and consistency had nurtured a lasting bond. Gratitude, expressed through simple gifts and heartfelt gestures, reflected a connection that would endure long after the dangers of the frontier were behind them. He realized that the most valuable gift one can receive is the trust and respect of those whose lives you have touched, and that such gifts carry a significance far greater than any material token. The story ended not with grand celebration or recognition from the town, but with quiet reflection, a sense of shared humanity, and the understanding that courage, compassion, and care can change lives in profound ways. Ethan had risked his life for two young girls, but in return he had received a gift far greater than gratitude. It was the enduring bond of trust, the warmth of friendship, and the knowledge that acts of bravery and kindness create ripples that extend far beyond the moment of action. As night fell, the family settled into their home, the glow of the fire casting gentle shadows on their faces. Ayana and her sister nestled close to their father, while Ethan stood outside, watching the stars emerge in the clear night sky. He felt a quiet satisfaction, a sense of purpose fulfilled, and a deep understanding that life's true rewards are found not only in what we do, but in the relationships we build, the trust we earn, and the lives we touch along the way. The river, the fire, the storms, and the daily acts of care had all led to this moment, a moment of connection, gratitude, and the profound gift of human trust.